Hello, I'm Malcolm Hazlitt. Our very special guest on this episode of Our Time is musician, writer, performer and producer Keith Preston. Hello and welcome to Our Time. The man you're about to meet is fantastic because he never stops creating, organising, writing, playing instruments. It's Keith Preston. Hi, Keith.
Hi, Malcolm.
Great to have you on the show. It's
Thank
true
you.
though, isn't it?
I do, yeah. I have my finger in quite a few pies. And,
I hope they don't get burnt.
well, I pulled out my thumb and
Boom, boom.
there was a plum, yeah. So I remember when the COVID period came in, I had 9 different projects happening at that time. And more or less, they all fell over. They all stopped or were deferred or
Yes, I
were
guess
delayed. So
it happened to all of us, really.
So it's a matter of picking up those pieces, but those it ranged from producing concerts to, I think I had about 15 puppetry bookings. There was music concerts. There was a conference in Sydney that I was organising. So it was a whole range of things: performances, events, activities. Some of them I do as for a living, and some I do for the love of it.
Yes, and you've been writing something in that time, but we'll talk about that in a minute.
Sure.
Can I take you right back to when you were a child? What did you feel you were going to do from childhood?
I'm not sure. I had a very unusual childhood because we were in the British Air Force. I'm originally from Belfast, and I went to 9 schools, and I lived 2.5 years in Yemen, 2.5 years in Malaysia, all over England, back into Belfast. And so when I came to Australia, I'd already, in some ways, I'd seen the world.
You'd lived a life already.
I lived a life, but I was very lucky that I went to a version of Hogwarts.
All right.
So I went to a grammar school that had enough Hogwarts in it to give me a bit of
with the robes and stuff as well.
Well, yeah, some of the masters.
Because I love seeing the people walking around in all of that.
The last school I went to was 500-year-old school linked to Peterborough Cathedral. So it was a cathedral school called King's School. But there was a love of languages, a love of culture. We did musicals. There was a bit of magic and mystery, and there was a lot of sport. So it's a kind of classic thing, and it turned me on to reading literature, I guess to culture in general, so that as soon as I came to Australia, I didn't like school, and I left school to become a professional golfer. Okay. That was my very first job, and I did a whole range of things. But I did go back. I tried it, and I went back to school, then played as an amateur.
How old were you then?
When I was 15. 15.
Why did your parents come to Australia? Because you obviously didn't come by yourself.
No, they migrated. It was the end of my dad's contract in the RAF.
Right.
And we got stationed. We didn't actually migrate. We got posted out here to Edinburgh Air Base. But then I went to Elizabeth High School, and actually it was a very interesting school. A lot of migrants, a lot of really good teachers. There was a theatre company. I joined the theatre company. There was a very good repertory company.
Yes.
So I went through that, and I did some of the English.
The Shedley Theatre.
Shedley Theatre, yeah, the Elizabeth Repertory. Yep. And then there was another very interesting. I was still playing golf, but there was a very unusual young theatre company doing experimental theatre called Spectrum, and I joined that, and I ended up acting, but also started directing. So by the time I was 20, I was directing theatre. I went to then Theatre 62 when John Edmund was there.
Right.
I worked on 3 productions. A couple of them.
This is a theatre that I actually now run,
which we
now
now
call Star Theatres. Yeah.
And there was 3 productions I worked with it, and then I think Theatre 62 went bust.
Well, it did, but also we changed the name of it because it wasn't at number 62. It's at 145, and they changed the name of the street in front from Burbage Road to Sir Donald Bradman Drive. Yep. So nobody really knew what it was anymore. But that was an incubator for so much performance work and actors. But getting back to you, so you're playing golf and you're working within a theatre company. Was it to you finding sort of two types of tribes in your life?
Oh, very much so. They didn't mix.
No,
they were
they're
completely
quite
different worlds. And I liked both of them, but also through golf, for example, I met German and Lithuanian migrants, and I became very good friends with them. So, in a sense, that introduced me to another side of Adelaide.
And another side of music as well?
And then eventually later on, when I picked up music when I went to uni. I'd always thought I'd love to play music somehow. So I kept going with theatre. I went to Flinders and did drama and philosophy. And I started writing scripts there and directing them. And we were producing quite radical political social satire, very different from the Elizabeth Repertory Company. And there was street theatre, but then we did rock and roll musicals. We did in places like the Red Shed and...
yes, you're pushing the envelope.
Yeah.
As to what was accepted at the time.
Well, we were very rowdy bunch of young arty graduates out of Flinders. But then I picked up music and I loved folk music. So I got very much involved in folk music and then later on into world music. I kind of drifted into world music because I had Italian friends and we formed probably the first world music groups in Adelaide, linking Irish and Italian music together. There was a group called Local Import. And out of that, I went into Greek music, Italian music, Arabic music, Middle Eastern music. And
because it's all different, but it's all the same.
Exactly.
Sort of,
it's a love of the tradition. The tradition was the big thing. And the same with theatre. While I liked experimental and upfront experimental music and forms, I very much loved, and I studied this at Flinders, traditional theatre, popular theatre, and what we call, which goes back to the mummers plays, the mystery plays, and in my case, also things like Punch and Judy. So I picked all of that popular theatre stuff.
Well, you are known for the Punch and Judy. What's your official...
Well, we're called Professors of Punch.
Professors,
and I'm one of the few professors.
Yep.
I've performed in Iran, Pakistan, Singapore, America, England, doing traditional Punch and Judy.
You just get thrown out of everywhere you go.
Well, a little door opens, and I've been all around Australia with it. I've experimented with Punch and Judy, and we've done shows like Punch and Judy Take Afghanistan. We did a satire on the Afghan war, and I do a musical version of Punch and Judy with my daughter, who's a very good musician.
Right.
So I've kind of kept, while I stopped doing theatre, I got more into arts organisation, arts administration, and music. I thought it's very hard to stay involved in theatre. So puppetry has been my...
Well, it's a bit of everything we need to do. That's the thing. Let's just take a quick look at some of the things that Keith has been involved with over the years, because it's absolutely fascinating. We've got a whole lot of posters here of the different things that has happened. What was this?
This is, last 10 years I've been co-running an arts venue in the Clare Valley. And we took the Heritage Courthouse there at the bottom, and we've turned it into a small arts venue. In that time, in the last 10 years, we've presented 300 shows.
Good gracious.
It's there. Comedy, cabaret, a lot of music.
How amazing.
And that was like a little festival. We were doing an annual music festival. So this was probably the biggest world music project I did, which was with a Punjabi musician who I met in 1988. I knew him for a number of years. He was a very big singer in Malaysia and then in London. He came out to Adelaide and we became friends, and he said, I love the music you play. I was playing bouzouki at that time. He said, let's form a group. And we presented Sikh music. We presented a couple of concerts. We recorded the concert. And anyway, we produced one CD. We sent that and got booked in Singapore, Vancouver. We got booked at the Sydney Arts Festival and the big Woodford Folk Festival. And then all of a sudden, that group ended up touring overseas on 20 occasions.
This one here with the...
the Dire Singh group.
Well, this is you playing bouzouki.
Yeah, so I played bouzouki with a Greek show at the Festival Centre. But the Dire Singh group We played in the Royal Albert Hall. We played in big concerts in America, Canada, and England.
It's amazing, actually.
And it wasn't planned. We didn't plan. So I was doing, I did all the management for the group and handled all the money. And we created 20 CDs in that time. So it was quite...
here's another shot of...
This is one of the projects I do with the Migrant Resource Centre, which has been going for 10 years. We work with 50 schools to celebrate Refugee Week. All the schools produce posters. So all the teachers create posters, which then a new exhibition is created every year, which tours around art galleries in South Australia.
The point is there's so much to this story, and we'll come back shortly and show some more. We'll be back in a tick. A special guest on this episode of Our Time is Keith Preston. Amazing, Keith. We're just looking at some of your past adventures, I suppose, because in a way they're all adventures, aren't they?
Yeah.
Because you don't know, you conceive of something and then try and make it happen.
And also, when you have a lot of balls up in the air, sometimes some of them take off. A door opens and you follow that for a while. And
well, we were talking before about the Punch and Judy show. There's a little poster here we didn't see before with Puppet Palace. Puppets for adults and kids in Gluttony. Well, that would be as part of the Fringe.
Well, that's right. And that was what 1 year was in Gluttony. I ran for 6 years. I ran this project in the Garden of Unearthly Delights. And I always do things that I think other people can come along with on the ride. So the Puppet Palace project, I tried to ensure that there was puppetry component in the Fringe. And one of the best ways was to create a puppet venue during the Fringe. So I ran it for 7 years, 6 years in the Garden, 1 year at Gluttony. And look, I think we got somewhere in around 6,000 or 7,000 people to come and see puppet shows during the Fringe.
Well, it is leave almost your whole education at the door and just let yourself go with it, isn't it? Like the Drumming Monkeys, I saw the ad for that, and it's such a simple setup, but the children just love it.
Well, exactly. Look, I think puppetry is very under-supported in South Australia. There are key puppet companies.
Take us on a strange adventure that humans can't make happen.
And look, back in 2012, my daughter and I went back to London. So we were the Australian contingent of the 350th birthday of Punch and Judy.
Ah, brilliant.
So that was quite an unbelievable celebration. Just all that history just all came together in one place and one time. It was all held in Covent Garden.
Well, you know, interesting you should say that, because a lot of people, I suppose, today don't realise the value of the past, because obviously we're not going to achieve anything and move forward if we think we're creating something new, because basically everything's been done before. It's just finding a different slant.
Well, it has. I look on it, it's almost like an environmental issue, is that we worry about losing our ecology and our environment and our species. By the same token, in arts and culture, we've got to manage our traditions and our heritage there. So we can't throw away. And it's like, I guess it's why I love traditional folk music, because I think it's the bed of everything we do in music.
But it is, and when you look at commercial music over the years, commercial music's stolen all of these bits and pieces from everything.
Yep.
Really. Keith, there was one more poster that we haven't had a look at yet.
Oh yeah.
I'm just interested.
What were you doing
to
before
see
you
what this one was, because this was clearly Victor Harbour is, for those not living in South Australia, Victor Harbour is probably one of the most popular holiday spots, because just a perfect location, particularly in the summer.
Yeah, this was a festival. At one point I was running this festival. I ran it for 15 years and developed it from a very small festival to quite a big festival. We had about 15,000 people coming, and we had it's a folk festival, but we had overseas acts, interstate acts, and the best of the South Australian acts, but lots of workshops and things like this. So it was very much brought together all of the folk scene and all the diversity.
But it's part of our human need to be together, isn't it? And to share and work off each other.
Look, and festivals are fantastic. They, you can do things at festivals you can't do any other time.
Yes.
But they're very risky, and that festival lasted 15 years, but then it stopped, and it was very hard to put it back together again.
Well, it's like the Folk Federation that you were the president of. That was very successful for a long period of time.
Yeah, and it was getting, it took me a long time, but I was able to get government funding, arts funding, and so it ran along very well. And in actual fact, at one point in time, it was turning over $500,000. It was through the Folk Festival. We established the Medieval Festival,
yes,
and we established the Folk Centre at Theberton. So there was, but it was very hard for one paid person to run, and so I'll admit it, I got very burnt out trying to manage all those things and build a bit of a folk music empire, I guess, which it took a lot out of me.
But if you don't have passionate people who really want to keep moving forward. So what have you done since? Because this COVID thing has happened and you've been sitting at home thinking, what do I do next?
Well, I know that some of the things will pick up again. So so I have my first...
History proves that too.
Yeah.
Keith Conlon was on the show a couple of weeks ago, and we were just comparing what happened in 1918, 1920 to what's literally happening today. And its parallels are so similar. But you've been writing a piece.
That's right. So so the music will start. I think I have my first music gig coming up on Saturday, which is a Sufi music thing, which is a little bit like the Daya Singh music, and that's with Pakistani musicians. So that's my first gig. But the thing I've been able to do, and I guess COVID helped this happen, is I've finished writing this musical, which I started writing 20 years ago. And I started writing it. I did a lot of community theatre, and I did theatre in schools and prisons, schools in workplaces, factories, and we toured around, this kind of thing. And I always wanted to write a play or a theatre piece about golf, using the sport of golf. So I've finished this script, which I think is really funny. It's about golf, but it's not. So in a sense, it's bringing my music, my songwriting, and I guess my interest in social satire. So essentially, it's a social satire using the medium of golf, and it's a musical. So it's called the Saltbush Downs Open Classic.
And this is going to happen during...
And this is going to happen in the Fringe. Coming up, it's going to happen at the
Providing,
start.
Of course, there is a Fringe next
I think there will be, unless something dreadful happens.
Look, we're going to take a short break and we'll be back in a moment. Keith Preston is our special guest. Keith, we're just talking about the musical, but it's not a musical as such. It's more than that, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a comedy cabaret musical. As I said, it's about golf. Golf is its core thing, but it's a satire on, I won't say on contemporary Australia or contemporary South Australia. So I always think my love of theatre is theatre that's engaged with contemporary things. So there's a lot of things thrown into this. In style, it's, I guess, if you imagine Rocky Horror Show meeting Caddyshack.
Right.
Something. So it's a farce.
Yes.
It's a sport. It's about.
Can you
sports.
play golf in fishnet tights? That's the question.
There's an element. It's a rock musical. It's not a folk music thing. It's a rock musical thing, but it's a small cast and it's cabaret up front, and it's set in the most remote golf never established, which is Saltbush Downs, out in the Never, right up on the corner of the Northern Territory border in the Simpson Desert. And this family a husband and wife called the divots. And if you know golf, a divot is what you hit out of the ground. So the divots are the husband and wife team. So imagine Barnaby Joyce and Michaela Cash. So they're our two loving couple. They somehow managed to build an oasis of golf out in the desert, but no one comes. They built it. There's a bar, there's a course, there's a 400-room motel, but no one comes. And they have to come up with an idea of how to get the public up to play golf in the Never Never. So that's I can't really tell you exactly how they do it, but they do it in a very sneaky way.
You have to come to see it.
They do it in a very sneaky way. And anyway, the whole world of golf then become the centre of world golf, becomes Saltbush Downs Golf Club, as they create the Saltbush Downs Open Classic to be played out there in the desert. Tiger Woods is coming, Rory McIlroy is coming, Greg Norman is coming, and the desert golfing champion from Inaminka is also coming. So everything is like a tournament that's happening out in the desert, but it's fast and it's slapstick and it's some
musical
funky,
and it's original.
Some very funky songs.
But see, that's it. I love original work. You know, we can go and see all the American shows, but we're not seeing enough written about and played with people from our country, our stories. I can imagine why the First Nation people are pushing so hard to get their messages across, because frankly, we don't know their stories either.
Exactly.
But we don't know our own stories either, you know, and we're such a multicultural bunch of people living in Australia, and we have such rich opportunities to share, you know, all the knowledge and music, all the things you've talked about.
Well, exactly. And I work in what you would call non-mainstream. I work in the traditional arts and the folk arts, and I work in the area of multiculturalism. So when you turn on your radio, the music that you hear is largely not of what Australia is at the moment.
Correct.
And to a degree, nor is a lot of the theatre, nor is a lot of our mainstream arts.
I agree.
I think it's got to change. And I think you're right. Aboriginal people are knocking on the door and saying, we are mainstream. And I think that's got to happen. So
we don't know enough about the stories. That's the thing. I think the Caucasian population simply don't know enough about their stories.
No, I got the confidence to finish this play. I would say I'm really proud of the script, and I'm really proud of the songs. The songs are really good, but I had to get there somehow. In the last 5 years, I've been involved in a project called Adelaide Songs. And so I've written 20, as a group of us songwriters, we've written 25 songs about Adelaide. So I've written a dozen songs about Wang Wang and Fooney, songs about Colonel Light, songs about Stormy Summers, songs about Hindley Street. And the fact that we've done this and we've produced a CD and we've done concerts. We're doing one in the town hall at the end of the Fringe. But just keeping active as a songwriter gave me the ability to finish this musical.
I understand what you're saying.
You know what I mean? You can't just sort of pull it out of thin air.
No, you don't. But unfortunately, we have to finish because our time is up. You know, when they say your time is up. Look, it's been lovely having your company. And Keith, it's been just lovely talking with you.
Thanks for having me.
Great success with the show. And thank you for joining us this time on Our Time. So until next time, keep yourself nice till then. Bye.